Rankings.
Hello, and welcome to round 24 of the TPO Rankings show, a show all about Australian football through the lens of the TPO Rankings. You can think of it like the FIFA World Rankings, but for 362 Australian football clubs. I am joined by a man who knows his way around an Excel spreadsheet. Jake, how are you going this evening?
Going well, Cody, and not only do I know my way around, I'm a nerd enough that I actually love it.
You love it, yeah, that's it. Well, we love you for it, Jake. Without that love, without your gigginess, we wouldn't have the TPO rankings. So, and I'm secretly jealous. I wish my brain worked like yours, at least in that regard.
You almost gave me a compliment.
Yeah, almost backhand compliment. So, Jake, this week we are recapping. Obviously, we had a massive week last week with 6 FFA Cup games. We previewed all 6 of them. And then we were going nuts on Instagram stories. Keeping up to date highlights, all that sort of stuff. So we had a huge week in the FFA Cup. We're going to briefly mention the 6 games that we talked about. Just as a quick recap, we know you probably already have heard all the results and that, but we're going to touch on it in TPO ranking style. So where these teams have moved, and also after the weekend's games. Most teams, I believe, were in action over the weekend too. And then we've got 4 games this week. So this show, we record Monday night. It's Monday night right now. Tuesday we will get this show up, and then the FFA Cup, we've got 4 games Wednesday night. So that's it for this show. We're going to keep it pretty straightforward, pretty streamlined, and we may as well jump into it. So Jake, I forget exactly who had each of these 6 games, but maybe we'll just go one for one. So I'll start here. We've got a run sheet here, so we'll run through it. Port Melbourne Sharks, RPA Leichhardt. So TPO rankings predicted a 2-1 win to RPA Leichhardt. Supporters 88. This is Instagram stories. We also got an FFA Cup tipping group, so this isn't taking into consideration the 60 or so people who voted over there. But 88% of the Instagram story voters voted for RPA Leichhardt, and the result was a 1-0. To be honest, I didn't catch much of this game. I was watching over the MyFootball app, and I was mostly watching the Armadale and Marconi game. But I heard it was a pretty tight affair. In terms of the rankings, though, no real change. RPA were heavy favourites, so they didn't really pick up too many points. But Port Melbourne fell 1 spot to they are now 40th. Jake, Avondale, Marconi.
Yeah, and before I do that, just to clarify there, when we say Port Melbourne are 40th,
Okay.
The numbers I've given you there, though, are the rankings before the weekend's game. So just
cool.
talking specifically about the impact of
Nice.
these FFA Cup games. So the first one that I'll look at here, as you mentioned, Avondale versus Marconi. The most likely score that was given by the TPO rankings was a 2-1 win to Avondale, and 53% of the Instagram voters, so this is a really close one, 53% of you voted for Avondale as well. And in the end, we were both on the winning side there. Avondale got up 4-1, as most of you will know. And Avondale, on the back of that, moved up 2 places in the rankings. They jumped to 16th at the time, and Marconi fell 2 places down to 34th.
Cool. Jake, you know what? You take the next one because you were at this game.
All right, so the next one, the All-Queensland Derby, Lions FC versus Olympic FC. The TPO rankings again said that Lions was favourites and the most likely score, and you'll see a theme here, 2-1. And the supporters, 60% of you also went with Lions, so we're all on the same side so far. And the result in the end was a 3-2 win to Lions, so we're both right again, and it was a pretty late winner there, about 5 minutes to go. And Lions actually jumped up 5 places. They had a really good impact from this up to 17th, and that's partly a result of this win, but also because of some of the clubs around them and what they were doing. And Olympic were down 1 place in the rankings to 32nd.
Cool. Well, Guelph, Croatia, the jersey I got on tonight, versus Adelaide Comets. The rankings actually predicted Adelaide Comets 3-0 win. They weren't bloody far off. The result was a 4-0 win. The supporters, 80% of you guys on Instagram stories voted for Adelaide Comets, so pretty comprehensively at all angles there. And Comets stay where they were at 24th on the rankings. Guelph down 9 places to 131st. So, yeah, unfortunate Guelph. Unlucky, although congratulations on making it this far. Jake, next game?
So the next one was the New South Wales Derby. Bonnie Rig versus Hakoah. TPO rankings couldn't split this one. They thought it would come out right down the middle and predicted a 1-1 draw. Supporters, you guys voted, or 55% of you anyway, voted for Hakoah. And in this case, neither of us were right. Bonnie Rig got up 2-0 at home, although as we touched on Facebook Live on Sunday night, Hakoah did get revenge on the weekend. They won their league game 3-0 against the same team there. But anyway, so both wrong there. But in terms of the TPO rankings, Bonnyrigg jump up 2 places to 46th, and Hakoah fell 4 places down to 45th. So they're both, Hakoah is 1 place on the rankings above Bonnyrigg, or at least that was the case before the weekend. It's probably a couple more places now after they got that win.
All right, and the last one here, we had Canberra FC hosting Broadmeadow Magic. TPO rankings predicted Magic to get up 2-1. 57% of the Instagram supporters also went for Magic. The result, 4-1 Broadmeadow, so pretty comprehensive win in the end. Broadmeadow up 1 spot to 27th on the rankings. Canberra FC down 11 places to 74th. Now, out of those 6 games, TPO rankings and the supporters got 5 out of 6, so did quite well. I mean, most of the favourites did win, but did well nonetheless. On the running tally there, that takes the supporters to 42, and TPO we're on 48, so still 6 points out in front. And the season is coming to a close, so we've only got probably we've still got a good 6-7 weeks maybe with finals, but you guys need to do some work to catch up.
Pick
there.
your actor.
Absolutely, Jake. There's probably some more results or some movements to talk about in the rankings. You want to do a brief recap of that, and then we'll jump into these 4 FFA Cup games this week.
Yeah, I thought I'd leave it kind of FFA Cup themed, seeing as though that's what the main point of the show is at the moment. And I just wanted to touch on what we've called the interstate adjustment that happens to the rankings whenever we have one of these FFA Cup games, where you have a club from a different state, or two clubs from different states playing each other. So what happens is you get the normal transfer of points from one team to the other. The winner picks up some points from the loser, and then you have this additional adjustment that happens to all the clubs from each of those 2 states. And the reason for that is just to try and calibrate the rankings. So as a very simple example, Apia beating Port Melbourne obviously benefits Apia, but it also gives every club in New South Wales a very, very small benefit as well, and every club from Victoria gets a very, very small decrease in points. So that's just the way it works, and it happens across all of those FFA Cup games. So in terms of what actually happened based on the games that we just went through, I thought I'd just summarise how each of the states fared. So New South Wales clubs actually ended up losing 2 TPO points, so you can see how small the number is across the board, and that was a combination of Apia getting a win, but then on the other side you had Marconi losing to Avondale.
Armadale, yep.
And Victoria, because it was both of those games were New South Wales versus Victoria. Victoria were obviously the reverse of that, so every Victorian club in the rankings picked up 2 TPO points. Moving on, South Australian clubs gained 2 TPO points, where Adelaide Comets got that win over Guelph, and all Western Australian clubs lost 2 TPO points on the back of that one as well. The bigger impact, though, was seen, and this is kind of interesting, in the Canberra and Broadmeadow Magic game, and it's because those 2, or the states that those 2 clubs come from, Northern New South Wales and ACT, have a fewer number of clubs in the TPO rankings at the moment. So the impact that we see is bigger because you're spreading that transfer of points across fewer teams. So what we actually saw was that all Northern New South Wales clubs actually gained 9 TPO points, so all of them got a bit of a boost, and all ACT clubs, on the back of Canberra's loss, they all lost about 20 TPO points, so quite a big impact there. So if you go back and look at last week's show and have a look at where the ACT clubs sat compared to now, you'll see that all of them will have dropped off about 20 points, and it kind of shifts the whole state down a little bit. So anyway, that's the very simple, well, maybe not so simple, but quick update on where kind of the states sit compared to each other.
Sure. All right. Thanks for that, Jake. All right, let's jump into the main section of our podcast/video show here, and that is this week's 4 FFA Cup ties. I'm excited by this one. Not quite as excited as last week's, as been the first round. Plus there was 6 games. Plus there's a fixture here that I'm not really that interested in. But anyway, we'll jump in. I'm going to start, Jake. We're going to kind of run through it the same way we did last week. We've got a nice graphic here Jake's put together for those watching the video that we'll talk to. Those on the podcast, obviously you can go and check out the video. We're at about 10 minutes in, so you can just go to about 10 minutes into the video and you'll find those images. And we're going to give our tips along the way. So we've done our personal tips and also the TPO rankings tips. So here we go. I'm going to start things off with Rockdale City Suns hosting Sydney FC. This should be a good game, Jake. We've got the best team in the country, Sydney FC, on the TPO rankings, hosting 20th place Rockdale City Suns, who are having an okay year. I forget exactly where they are on the table. I forgot to bring that up. I think they're sort of mid-table, but obviously, although being at home on the I think Astro sort of turf pitch, Sydney FC going in as massive favourites, pretty much 90% probability of winning this game. Obviously everyone knows how successful Sydney FC have been. Although they've lost two of their better players in the off season. It is their pre-season, so I think they've had a few games down there. But really, this is still a friendly not friendly, but it is a pre-season game for them. Whereas Rockdale are hardened and been playing all season. So you never know. That 90% probably doesn't bring into account that. So I think it's probably going to be a little bit closer to that. In terms of the tips, I'll just read them out here. So I've picked Sydney FC win 2-0. Jake's also gone Sydney FC 4-0. And the TPO ranking system has gone Sydney 3-0. So there you go, 2-3, 4-0. Jake, that's all I really want to touch on with that. It's pretty heavy favourites, Sydney FC. But I think everyone, apart from the Sydney FC supporters, are hoping for a bit of an upset there with Rockdale City Suns. I'd love to see them get up. Yeah. Jake, you want to talk to the next game there?
I will, and I'll just on your game as well. I mean that it kind of maybe not. I think Sydney will get up as my tips suggest, but it was only a few years ago when the A-League champions Adelaide United went down to Redlands in the FFA Cup. So true. Can't never say never. Mm-hmm. So the one I'll look at first is this Heidelberg United versus Charlestown City Blues game, and hence I've got my Heidelberg shirt on tonight. I think they're the only jersey that I have for any of the clubs playing this week, so not that I probably would have chosen it anyway, but I didn't have a choice. Heidelberg, obviously one of the best clubs.
Jake, you don't have your Central Coast Mariners shirt anymore?
I don't. don't put that out there, Cody. Heidelberg, obviously one of the best clubs in the country outside the A-League, and even ranked higher than a couple of those A-League clubs. Up until fairly recently, probably the last month or so, they were ranked as the highest non-A-League club, and have only just fallen down, so they're currently ranked 10th. Charlestown City Blues, on the other hand, quite a way down. They're ranked 94th in the country from northern New South Wales, and their form's kind of been up and down. We've talked about them this year a few times, Cody. They had a really good start to the season, but since fell off, and they picked up their first win over the weekend in a long time, in about a month. So I guess the TPO probabilities give Heidelberg a very clear advantage here, almost the same numbers as the game you just spoke about, Cody. So Heidelberg's given the same chance of beating Charlestown as Sydney FC is of beating Rockdale. That's how wide the gap is, or at least suggested by the TPO rankings. In terms of reading off some of these tips that we've put in, Cody, you've gone Heidelberg 5-1, so you think it's going to be quite a gap. I think it's going to be even more clear than that. I've gone 5-0. Wow. And the TPO rankings algorithm has suggested that 3-0 is the most likely scoreline. So there you go. Heidelberg clear favourites there.
Yep. I think just a quick glance over our FFA Cup tipping page. I did notice someone picked Charlestown City Blues, probably more so just to maybe get a few points if everyone else is wrong. But pretty much it looked like all but one of the 30 or 40 tips we've had just today were Heidelberg. So I think everyone is banking on Heidelberg to win. I'd be very, very surprised if they don't.
And I also saw Lubo Milesevic, who played for Charlestown City Blues, has just announced his immediate retirement. He had a knee injury, I think it was. Don't know if it was in the last week. Or must have fairly recently. So on the FFA Cup eve, he's been ruled out and is retired, so he won't be playing in that one either.
There you go. They're definitely going to win. Okay, Jake, I'm going to take the next one because you can wrap up with the boring game. Yeah, we can just skip it. No, just kidding. We better do it. Pay its respect. It is still a FFA Cup game. So anyway, I'm going to take this clash that I never in a million years would have predicted happening. Don't know why. It's just two random clubs. Cairns FC hosting Armadale from Western Australia. So I guess Cairns FC have been there every single year under a different name, obviously in the past, far north Queensland. But Armadale, a bit of a surprise getting up into the FFA Cup a little bit. They're both these clubs are basically mid-table, one in the Queensland NPL, one in the Western Australian NPL. Looking at the form though, Cairns not in great form. That looks like out of here they've lost 3 of their last 5 games. They just lost to Mackay, the Magpies on the weekend. I think it was 3-1. So they're not in great form, Jake. But they are at home. Armadale, obviously big travel, but it's a once-off travel thing. Armadale probably just like stoked to be in the FFA Cup travelling. They'll be having the time of their lives. Cairns, I imagine, will draw a decent crowd down to the local park there, a bit of FFA Cup fever. So I'm really looking forward to this one. It's just a bit of a really random game to me, at least, and such a big such a big distance here between Cairns and Armadale. The probabilities the TPO system has come up with here are just right down the middle. I mean, 39.1% Cairns, 38% Armadale. So, and 22 the draw. It's just going to be really close. I suppose we have to, for the TPO, we have said Cairns being at home. But look at that rankings, Jake. Armadale 71st, Cairns 72nd. So they're literally on top of each other.
This one's actually really interesting, considering most people probably brush this off as a dud, or not one that is exciting. But looking at and not to take over what you're talking about there, Cody, but if you look at the kind of TPO rankings history for these two clubs, it's only been in literally the last 1 or 2 weeks that Armadale has gone in front of Cairns on the rankings. So, up for the last literally 5 years, Cairns has been ranked much higher than Armadale, and it's only just changed over. So it's
interesting.
It's perfect timing for this clash.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of our tips, I've gone for Cairns 3-2. I think it'll be a really good game, close game, but Cairns will just sneak through. You've gone the opposite, Jake. You've gone Armadale 3-2, and the system has gone 1-1. So there you go. It's going to be really tight, I believe, but I mean, who knows? It could be blown out either way.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a toss it up in the air and see what happens. I am very much looking forward to this bit of a random clash. Jake, do you want to wrap us up with the all-important clash here, the pre-season friendly? Adelaide United and Central Coast Mariners.
Yep, the pre-season friendly that no A-League side really takes all that seriously, despite in the news saying we take this really seriously. Adelaide versus Central Coast. It's kind of hard to know much about the form of these clubs. Obviously, first official or competitive game back after the off-season. Although you can look back, maybe more out of interest than anything else. Central Coast Mariners' last 5 games at the end of the season were all losses. So, they weren't looking good. They're ranked as the 13th best club in the country right now. And yes, you heard that right. There's only 10 A-League sides. They're ranked 13th. A number of non-A-League clubs ranked higher than them. Adelaide ranked 4th at the moment. So given that they're at home plus ranked higher, they're going to be the favourites here. The TPO probability suggests 69% probability of Adelaide winning and only 14% of the Central Coast Mariners. So I don't know, nothing really to say about that one.
No.
I mean, I guess the thing, if you want to draw some excitement from this, and we shouldn't play it down too much, I guess, Cody, although we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on the other games. But there's some personnel changes, some new players, signings, that sort of thing. So it's good to get a gauge for those that watch a lot of the A-League of how these teams are shaping up going into the season. If I look at our tips there, Cody, you've said Adelaide 1-0 as your prediction. I've gone Adelaide 2-0, and the TPO algorithm is saying 2-1 to Adelaide. So we're all backing Adelaide to varying degrees.
Cool. Well, that's it. That's the show. We wanted to keep it brief. That's the FFA Cup for this week, and we touched on last week's show's FFA Cup games as well. Jake, in terms of these games, I'm really looking forward to that Heidelberg, Charlestown, and the Cairns Armadale. I think Rockdale City Suns will be good if they can keep it close until the end, or at least till the second half. I really hope Sydney FC don't run away with it. Yeah, but in terms of the other game, Adelaide and Central Coast, to me, it's just a bit of a, you get a gauge where they are in their pre-season, what they'll look like in the upcoming. Yeah. But they're two teams I don't really care about, to be honest. But it is, we have to be respectful. It is the two of the better teams in the country. So, A-League will get their time to shine in just a month or two. So, other than that, Jake, do you want to touch on anything else, or you want to wrap this show up?
No, I think we could probably wrap it up. Just to add to what you were saying, for me, I am looking forward to seeing how Heidelberg or how Charlestown stand up to Heidelberg and Rockdale, if they can hold Sydney, to a draw or 0-0 for a while. They might make a game of it, but I might be one of the only ones who says this, but Cairns versus Armadale is the most exciting for me by quite a way, just by, not necessarily because they're the best clubs in their states or anything like that, but just because they're so close on the rankings. They're clubs that no one would ever have compared up until now. Like, it's just it's hard to kind of think of a time when you'll see these clubs ever play each other again, unless it's another FFA Cup in the future. So I'll be looking forward to seeing how that one plays out.
Definitely. Well, join us over on Instagram stories. If I'm not too busy anyway, I'll jump on and keep the stories up to date and do a bit of that like I did last week. It was lots of fun. Jake, thanks for joining me tonight. Keep working on those Excel spreadsheet skills.
I always will. Thank you, Cody.
And thanks for watching, guys. And let us know comments in the comment section as you can on YouTube and Facebook. And if you do, hey, I've got one ask this week. If you listen to this on the podcast, or even if you've listened to one podcast before and you're watching on the video, can you head over to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever the hell you get your podcast from and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that. It helps us be found. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you next week. See you, Jake.
See you, Cody. Catch you later.